are live, we are live, we are live as it gets. AEW Double or Nothing has just gone off the air. An interesting one, certainly an event that I think anyway got saved. I think it got saved by the last two matches on the show. An event that certainly started very, very slowly. I think one of the biggest talking points coming out of this show will be the fact that the AEW needs to move Double or Nothing away from Las Vegas. I know obviously that it's Double or Nothing, it's a gambling theme and all that kind of stuff, but they can take it to Atlantic City or something like that. This Las Vegas crowd was not it for AEW Double or Nothing tonight, and I think it's not even in the case of, necessarily super bad matches or anything like that. It was just a case of they just weren't there for a lot of it. They were quiet. You could see early on that they clearly had some struggles selling tickets for the show, because when the show started there were a lot of empty seats on the hard camera side, and AEW clearly, I think as the show went on, managed to sort of move things together and fill those seats up. And it was a slow show with some very confusing finishes, and finishes that even more took the life out of a crowd that really wasn't there at points. But I think definitely the story of it will be that the final two matches of this show, the AEW World Championship and the Anarchy in the Arena, really saved it. I still think in terms of overall AEW pay-per-views, I think you go back through AEW's history, they tend to always deliver on pay-per-views, and there have been very few AEW pay-per-views that afterwards you go, I'm not sure about that. This will probably be in that category of when we're talking about, and it seems quite over the top to say the worst AEW pay-per-view of all time or anything like that, but it certainly is nowhere near the best, no doubt about that. Now, what it did have is an excellent AEW World Championship match, which didn't main event, which at the time I was kind of like, oof, I feel that's a bit of a slight on the AEW World Championship. I don't think it's a slight to the competitors, because going into the show, I wasn't totally sold on some of the participants in the match, to say the least, but I felt that they delivered. And the Anarchy in the Arena match, it was exactly what it said it was going to be on the tin. It was just that, Anarchy in the Arena. I loved it. It's not for everyone, those kind of matches. I know the Young Buck psychology, the Elite psychology isn't for everyone. I know Jon Moxley bleeding all the time isn't for everyone. I know those kind of hardcore multi-camera matches aren't for everyone. But I did think that AEW did a good job with that. And I think, again, in terms of the outcome, what we're building towards, and to be fair, AEW have been planting the seeds for a really long time about Don Callis recruiting, scouting Konosuke Takeshita as someone that I think people thought he was going to join the Elite. Frankly, he did join the Elite for a little bit of time. He was on being the Elite. I think he even made a save at one point, didn't he? So we're building towards Konosuke Takeshita versus Kenny Omega match, and frankly, that match could be something very, very special. If they're given time, a singles match, let's say it won't be at Forbidden Door, because that's going to be Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. What we have got actually for ourselves, think about this going forward, is what we do have is a big summer for Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega is going to be involved in some big, classic banger matches this summer. Whether it's Forbidden Door, he's facing Will Ospreay. Probably at All Out. I mean, All In, we don't know what he's going to be doing at Wembley, but it could be anything. I mean, CM Punk, who knows? And then All Out, he could face Konosuke Takeshita. So there's some really exciting moments for Kenny Omega, and some really exciting matches coming for Kenny Omega. But as I said, as a show, not a classic by any stretch of the imagination. One of the sort of the lesser deliveries for a while, and I think AEW will probably stay clear of Las Vegas moving forward. I think for a time being. This, again, it wasn't it. And I think when it comes to ticket sales and stuff like that, I know that reports out there suggested that AEW had sold 10,000 tickets or over 10,000 tickets for this show. It didn't feel like it. It's a big arena, so I don't know. But that crowd was not good. That crowd, not only was it not good, it didn't feel like an AEW crowd. And at points throughout this show this evening, production felt a bit off. It just didn't feel AEW. It's difficult to put my finger on it because I don't think it's one particular thing. But quiet crowd, certain production snafus, certain matches, certain decisions, certain finishes just kind of made you go, what? So we'll get through it. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. We've already got 50 people watching, so if you haven't already, click that like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. let's do a very, very quick subscriber check as well before we go through the matches. We're currently at 11,322. So if you haven't already, let's see if we can get to 3,330. Let's go to our first match of the evening, which was on the buy-in, which was this 6-man tag team match, which was Hook teaming up with the Hardy Boys, Hardys, Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy against the tag team, or the trios team, of Ethan Page and the Gunns. Of course, this was Jeff Hardy's first match in 11 months, and when this was announced for the buy-in, I did say to myself, oof, Jeff Hardy on the buy-in, this is Jeff Hardy's first match in a year, given everything he's been through, given his comeback. Is it not somewhat surprising that Jeff Hardy would be on the buy-in? Now, when I watched this match, I said, I see why it's on the buy-in, for a couple of reasons. One being, look, Jeff Hardy, just because he's back and just because he's done the recovery that he has and now he's out of the legal issues, that doesn't mean you put him straight in the main event or even in a featured spot. Remember, the Hardys were going to win the AEW World Tag Team Championships last year. That's what the plan was. And they were scheduled for a ladder match for the AEW World Tag Team titles that I think they were meant to win. And I was expecting to see a refreshed and rejuvenated Jeff Hardy in this match. And you can say ring rust. I know he's just had surgery on his eyes, or his eye rather. But when we watched Jeff Hardy wrestle last year, and maybe this is where some of the the issues with alcohol came into effect, is that this looks like a guy that's in pain. This looks like this is a guy that's struggling with taking bumps. This looks like a guy that, again, he looks beat up. And I thought after a year off, we wouldn't maybe see that as much this evening. But to be honest, we kind of just saw the same Jeff. We saw the same Jeff that, throughout the match, I thought he looked sluggish, not in the sense of, anything nefarious. He looks beat up. And that's what he is. And I think that was everyone's concern for him when he was having those issues, is like he's beat up. Like physically, you can't do what Jeff Hardy has done for 20 plus years and not be beat up. Of course he's beat up, and you can see it and you can feel it, and it's difficult to watch sometimes. As far as the match goes, I mean, again, it was on the buy-in, but it went 15 minutes. I was surprised it got that long, really. And now the story is, once Ethan Page and the firm had Matt Hardy's contract, now you've got the Hardys and Hook. They're in control of Ethan Page's contract because they won. As far as what their story is going to be going forward, I don't know. I don't know what the story is with that going forward. I don't know if I particularly care all that much, honestly. This was a story that was building through the likes of AEW Dark and Dark Elevation whilst it was still on, and then kind of spilled over to Rampage. But I saw someone say that they felt that this was a Rampage match, and I tend to agree. It was a match that deserved to be on the buy-in. It didn't have really much business being on pay-per-view. So I thought that was the right call. And my hope is, like I said, with Jeff, is that maybe he. I hope that he can. It was just rust, it was just ring rust, something like that. But I do have my concerns about that. Getting to the main pay-per-view, we started off the show with the Blackjack Battle Royale for the International Championship, and Orange Cassidy is still your AEW International Champion. Participants in this match included, and actually we can do this in the order of elimination too, Tony Nese and Ari Daivari were the first two eliminated. Commander was then eliminated. Kip Sabian, Chuck Taylor, The Blade, The Butcher, Bandido, Lee Moriarty, Trent Beretta. Keith Lee, of course, was in there with Swerve Strickland. Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland were having their feud, and it was meant to lead to a match at Double or Nothing. Instead, they were both in the International Championship Battle Royale, the Blackjack Battle Royale. Ray Phoenix, Juice Robinson and Jay White, yes, Bullet Club Gold were also in this. They were eliminated both by Absolute Ricky Starks. This feud clearly between them is continuing, because backstage later on in the show, you guessed it, they attacked Absolute Ricky Starks. They were actually later chased off by FTR, so I don't know if we're getting like Ricky Starks and FTR versus Bullet Club Gold and someone else, or maybe if we're getting tag titles. Look, Jay White, this is my thing with Jay White, is that clearly this guy, he's a big deal. He is. I mean, he main evented Wrestle Kingdom earlier on this year. He's former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Last year at Forbidden Door, he won a match that included Hangman Adam Page, Adam Cole, and, Kazuchika Okada. Like, he's a big deal, and he's a big signing for AEW. And I think the worries about him getting lost in the shuffle, people were maybe somewhat naive to say, yeah, but it's Jay White, he's not going to get lost in the shuffle. But it kind of did feel like they signed him with not a lot of plans of how they were going to use him. And let's be honest too, if there wasn't a hiring freeze in WWE, chances are he might have been signed by WWE and he might have chosen them over AEW. He's in AEW, and if all they've got for him at the moment is Bullet Club again, at the very least a tag team title feud with FTR, I'm interested in that. I don't think it's the best for him. But it's a way to start him up anyway. So they're continuing that feud. Ricky Starks was then eventually eliminated by Big Bill. Brian Cage was eliminated by Dustin Rose. Dustin Rose was eliminated by Swerve Strickland. You then had the final four of Penta, Big Bill, and Swerve Strickland, along with Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy eventually gets the victory. Big Bill was eliminated actually by Swerve Strickland, and then eventually Cassidy eliminates Swerve Strickland. A fun spot where they both go over the top. They're hanging on to the outside of the ring. You have Orange Cassidy try and eliminate Swerve, and then Swerve's hanging on like that, and you think, oh, is he going to go for an orange punch? And then you just realize, no, I'm just going to kick his arm, stop him from holding the top rope. Does it easily, retains the championship. It was initially slow, and at the finish, I got people chanting, and it was okay. But again, this match suffered initially, and until it got to the finish, this match suffered from a crowd that just didn't feel like they were participating, and I never really understand this. I mean, obviously, look, if you buy a ticket, you can do whatever you want within reason. Obviously, you can cheer if you want to cheer. You can sit on your hands and say nothing if you want to sit on your hands and do nothing. But we've seen double or nothing events throughout the years with really lively crowds. It was for a while, certainly, it was a destination pay-per-view, a destination event, in that you had people from all over, not just America, but all over the world, fly in for Double or Nothing weekend. And maybe that's part of it too, is that people maybe didn't do that as much this year because of the other big events they've got coming up. It's not because maybe of a lack of interest in AEW, it's just a lack of interest in this specific event, because the idea is, well, I don't want to fly into Vegas because next month I'm going to fly into Toronto for Forbidden Door because that's a bigger show. And then after that, I might fly to the UK, or I'm going to go to Wembley, or, for that big show because that's a historic show. I think that might be part of it. And then maybe in June or next month, I might fly to Chicago because I want to see that first Collision show of CM Punk there, or at the very least, I want to fly to Chicago if they're going back there for All Out. I want to fly there for that. And it might just be a case of actually in the pecking order of pay-per-views this year, it's just not as important as it was previously. And Billy says in the chat they announced 11,500 fans there, which, the numbers online suggested that it was over 10,000. But if that is the case, and I'm not suggesting it's not, but if that is the case, then that's AEW's fault for not making that look better for television. I would say that would be my critique of that. Then, if you had all of those people in that arena, why did you go on the air with the hard cam having spots of seats missing? Granted, people could arrive late, this, that, and the other, but you need, from a production point of view, and you could tell the first 3 matches watching it, you could see production staff, because they were staff with headsets on, going up and sitting in seats and figuring out and moving people around, shifting people over. And that needs to be done before the show goes on the air. You've got time to do that. That's what the buy-in's for, or that's why you've got all of these camera angles in the production truck. You can tell people to go and sit where, move people around, and make it look better. Or at the very least, you go, look, whilst we're doing this, let's light the crowd a certain way. Let's protect ourselves, because it's not going to look as good as it can look, and it is distracting. And that certainly was a problem. I mean, well, again, for this opening match, when the show went on the air, it was really right there, and eventually they stopped using that hard camera cam for a while whilst they figured out and resolved the issue. So Orange Cassidy retains, and this moved on to our next match, which to be honest was probably the match I was most disappointed by throughout the evening, which was the unsanctioned match between Adam Cole and Chris Jericho. Sabu was the special guest enforcer in this one. And Adam Cole gets the win. And as I mentioned, when it comes to the Battle Royal, a really quiet crowd was really quiet for this one. And essentially, this was an unsanctioned match that started off with both factions, if you will, brawling. Sabu, who was the guest enforcer, he came out in a suit and took a bump in the table and threw a chair at people. The Jericho Appreciation Society and Roderick Strong and Sabu brawled to the back, so it did turn into a one-on-one contest. At one point, Adam Cole's got a chain out with two sort of handcuffs, and he cuffs himself to Chris Jericho, so they're tethered. Britt Baker run out to the ring. She hits Jericho a few times with a kendo stick. Saraya comes out, and she hits her with a kendo stick as well, so chases off Saraya. This would lead to an announcement being made later on in the evening. And the finish was essentially Adam Cole lowers the boom on Jericho, back of their head. That's not enough. Of course, there's been so much going on. It's his personal. So he wraps his knee in the chain, lowers the boom again. And I thought, okay, pinfall, move on. Because Adam Cole's going for the AEW World Championship next. It was going to be teased on Dynamite. They decided to cut the backstage segment. Instead, they replaced it with an MJF one with Renee Paquette. But that's going to be the feud going forward, seemingly. And the finish they decided to go with instead was a referee stoppage or total knockout. And you had Jericho seemingly out, and Adam Cole's doing hammer fists. Not with the chain, he's just doing hammer fists to Jericho's head. Now, if you're going to do that finish, it has to look legit. And the problem is, it didn't look legit. You know, Jericho's head was still clearly feeding Cole, telling him, you know, hit me harder, hit me more, do more, make it look more vicious. And it didn't. Jericho was looking up. He was still clearly conscious. So, you know, he couldn't even go with that. Adam Cole's hammer punches and, you know, fist didn't look that great. And again, he wasn't using a weapon. I know obviously this was the UFC, and thing is, we live in a day and age where people have seen the UFC. You've seen what it looks like when someone's in the mount position and they've got hammer fists and fist. The guy's head's bouncing up and like that. It's violent. It's brutal. They've done the finish in other companies as well. In WWE, I think back to Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton at SummerSlam 2016. The elbows and all that kind of stuff. Now, you don't have to be that violent, but that finish was so violent and looked so good that Chris Jericho confronted Brock Lesnar backstage and thought Brock had gone into business for himself, and he hadn't. That's how good that finish was. That's not what that finish was tonight. It didn't look good. And again, an already flat crowd was really flat for this. They did not like this finish. It didn't work. And just as a match in itself, this was the first time ever match between Adam Cole and Chris Jericho. And frankly, I just didn't think it worked. I didn't think it worked. The finish didn't work. And because of this, they did a promo segment later on backstage where Jericho was with Saraya, and they said, they can't do this. Do you know who I am? This needs to stop. We've requested a mixed tag team match. So on Dynamite, we're going to have Jericho and Saraya versus Adam Cole and Britt Baker. And maybe this will be the end of it. It also then resulted in Jericho throwing a fireball in the face of a backstage production worker. So that's what they're going with. But again, in terms of a match, I don't think this one worked. It must be said. Next match, we had tag team championships on the line. FTR retain their World Tag Team Championships by defeating Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal. They had, of course, Karen Jarrett, Sonjay Dutt, Satnam Singh in their corner. Mark Briscoe was the special guest referee. And a bit like a lot of the matches to this point, apologies if I'm going to be repeating myself, but this was a lot of the pay-per-view was slow, but a finish that it got the crowd going. The finish got the crowd, but we took, my goodness me, a long time to get there. So of course the story in this is that Mark Briscoe, he respects FTR, he's friends with FTR, he respects Jay Lethal, he's had matches against Jay Lethal in the past, doesn't really know Jeff Jarrett, and Jeff Jarrett's trying to sort of take advantage of the relationship, I suppose, between Mark Briscoe and Jay Lethal, or as Mark Briscoe wants to call it, down the middle. So there was a lot of sort of nonsense going on, and again, crowd was quiet for about 3/4 of this one. They only came to life really when Jarrett was going to go for a guitar shot, and he accidentally just blasts Mark Briscoe with a guitar, and the crowd suddenly came alive for that because they were like, "Oh, cool." and they like that. So whilst that's going on, FTR go and hit a shatter machine. There's no referee, of course, because Mark Briscoe's down, selling the guitar shut. So Aubrey Edwards comes out, runs down to the ring, and Sonjay Dutt says, "You're not the referee. You can't get into the ring." Just says, "I'm not letting you go past. You are not going past. I'm not having it. You will not go past me. You cannot get into the ring." She's like, "I'm the official. Of course I can get into the ring. You can't stop me from getting in the ring. I'm going to be going in the ring." And then we got probably the loudest pop of the night, because obviously nobody can hit Aubrey Edwards. A man can't hit Aubrey Edwards with a guitar. There just happened to be a female at ringside. There was Karen Jarrett, and Karen Jarrett absolutely destroyed Aubrey Edwards with this guitar shot, which got the crowd. They woke back up when it came to that. Next thing you know, Mark Briscoe wakes up in the ring. Shatter machine on Jeff Jarrett. 1, 2, 3. Good finish. There was a lot of shenanigans, a lot of moving parts, a lot of stuff going on. The finish, like I said, got the crowd, and they popped for the finish. It was an extravagant, long-winded finish, but the crowd liked that. But this match went 20 minutes, and in comparison to some other matches on the show, apart from the Battle Royal and the main event, and then the two co-main events, which of course did go longer, this was one of the longer matches of the show, and I didn't think it needed to be that long. But like I said, the finish worked. In a lot of some of the matches tonight, you would say finish didn't work. But this wasn't one of those situations. The finish worked in this one, so I give credit to those involved in that. As to what's next, I think they've teased Bullet Club Gold versus FTR, so I think that's probably where they're going to be going for that one. But again, as the finish was good, but the build there took its time, certainly. Be sure to smash a like on the like button, guys. We got over 60 people watching, so if you haven't already, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe too, bottom right-hand corner. Next match was the ladder match for the TNT Championship, and we still have our current TNT champion, that is Wardlow. He defeated Christian Cage in a ladder match. This one was fun. As ladder matches go, I mean, it wasn't the most iconic ladder match you were going to see. I did worry, to be honest, about having Christian in a ladder match in 2023, given his history of concussions. Some big set piece spots through it, one of which saw Wardlow try and do a jump from the turnbuckle to the ladder with Christian on it, and this is the problem with sometimes with ladder matches, is they've got a mind of their own. So Wardlow jumped on it, this ladder just completely fell apart. Wardlow then eventually tries to climb it once again. Rick Knox does his best to try and hold the ladder down. It's just collapsed, so he had to get a new ladder. You had a spot where Arn Anderson very, very, very clearly got some food dye in his mouth, and I guess neutralized Luchasaurus they tried to imply he bit off Luchasaurus's thumb. This led to Wardlow attacking Luchasaurus, and then there was 2 tables set up on the outside of the ring. Wardlow puts Luchasaurus on both tables, and then Wardlow's been very open. I remember seeing an interview, I think it was with Nick Houseman, that Wardlow did quite a while ago. Maybe it was over a year or so ago. And he said that he was the biggest Jeff Hardy fan growing up. He said, "I'm a Jeff Hardy fan. I've been a Jeff Hardy fan my whole life." It was when Jeff had just come in, I think, to AEW, or there were rumors that he was going to come in. And he said, I've always been a Jeff Hardy fan. He was my guy growing up. I love Jeff Hardy. And watching that spot he did with Luchasaurus tonight, you can tell he's a Jeff Hardy fan. He basically did the spot, which is Jeff Hardy at WrestleMania 2000 doing the swanton through Bubba Ray, through a table, off a ladder that's like 20, 25 feet in the air. There's a giant ladder at ringside. Wardlow climbs up it. Luchasaurus is laid across 2 tables. Swanton bomb through Luchasaurus, through the table. And then what they did was actually some really fantastic camera work, which I can't be said throughout the majority of the show, but really fantastic camera work, because they then had a shot across the ring, and you just saw Christian Cage peek up. He just peeked up, and he had the evilest look in his, like, proper super villain look in his face, thinking, "Oh, this guy's been sacrificed. I can go up and climb it." It doesn't work out. Wardlow, actually, it was Arn Anderson sort of moved the ladder. Wardlow powerbombs Christian Cage. He goes out to the outside of the ring. Wardlow climbs the ladder, still the TNT champion. So decent match. Again, not match of the show, but by that point I was like, well, that's better. And the crowd were into the big spots, so that was decent. Next match was the Women's Championship match, and we have a brand new AEW Women's World Champion. Kind of expected here, but Toni Storm has defeated Jamie Hayter and is the new AEW Women's World Champion. Again, not really too much to talk about in terms of this one. It went over 3 minutes, which I think is probably longer than people expected it to go, because we knew that Jamie Hayter was hurt. Jamie Hayter's got an injured shoulder, legitimately. Tony Khan confirmed that on the media call heading into Double or Nothing. Didn't confirm whether she was cleared or not. So we were expecting what's going to happen here, shenanigans-wise. And we got shenanigans. Toni Storm made her entrance. Jamie Hayter's music played, nowhere to be seen. Music played again. She stumbles out. She's being attacked by Saraya and Ruby Soho. Eventually, you've got the likes of Hikaru Shida come out, Britt Baker come out to try and neutralize the Outcast, and Jamie Hayter does legitimately get some offense in. And at this point, I was thinking, is maybe the injury at work or something like that? It's not. She goes for the Hayter raid. She can't do it because she's got an injured arm, injured shoulder, and eventually Toni Storm hits the hip attack and she gets the victory. So she's now a 2-time AEW Women's World Champion. It sucks for Jamie Hayter, certainly, because she's popular, she's over, she's British as well, and you've got that big London show coming up later on this year. As to what's going to happen with her now going forward, I don't know. And I think she'd be worried about that. I don't know if it's a case of she's going to be gone for a long period of time. I don't know if it's a case of get the belt off her now and hopefully she can be back by August. That might be what they're thinking, 2 and a bit months. They've got time, but they need to do something now. I think that might be the most likely option for her. But really unfortunate for her. But like I said, the match only went over 3 minutes, so there's not too much to talk about when it comes to that, certainly. Next match was the Trios Championship match. The House of Black had the open house rules for the AEW World Trios Championships, and I think most people knew the people that were going to accept the challenge were none other than the Acclaimed, that being Anthony Bowens, Max Caster, and of course Daddy Ass by their side, Billy Gunn. The story of this one was actually really simple, which was Anthony Bowens is in the majority of the match. Anthony Bowens is in the majority of the match. He gets his knee worked over the whole time. Knee worked over. At several different points is trying to tag in Billy Gunn, because Billy Gunn's the big guy in the team. Keeps trying to tag him. Eventually, he can tag him, and the finish actually really kind of came out of nowhere, really, because Billy Gunn comes in, house on fire, eventually hits the famous on Brody King, and Brody King takes a hell of a bump when he does this as well. I don't think I've seen many people take the famouser like this, but he takes a bump. Brody King literally rolls on the top of his head and almost actually lands on top of Billy Gunn, rolls out of the ring. Buddy Matthews is through the middle rope. Billy Gunn hits a famouser on him, sort of guillotine leg drop style, and whilst Billy Gunn's taunting Buddy Matthews, doing the DX crotch chop, turns around, bang, Malachi Black fades him to black. 1, 2, 3, and the House of Black retained the Trios Championships, which wasn't surprised necessarily they went down that route of having them retained, because I think that's probably the right call. I just now look at moving forward, who would their opponents be in AEW moving forward? CM Punk and FTR are going to be coming back. I think they'll probably do that match at some point down the line. Other trios that are left, it's going to be a difficult one. I think they've probably got to, build them back up, unless, Bullet Club Gold can add another member. They could do that. The Blackpool Combat Club could challenge, particularly after tonight's main event. That could happen, I guess. But what I did like with this is that with this open house rules, they shoot the arena, or they light the arena differently. So they've got, it's not like, Bray Wyatt and The Fiend in the Red Light of Doom or anything like that. It's more the crowd is lit darker, and they've got some graphics playing on the screen. But given there were some empty seats, I think actually helped the look of the crowd quite significantly, it must be said. So I thought that was a good move by AEW. Next, the TBS Championship reign of one Jade Cargill has come to a shocking conclusion, because Jade Cargill is no longer the TBS champion. Now, looking at this graphic, you might think, what, did Taya Valkyrie win it? She did not win it, but someone that did is Chris Statlander. Yes, Jade Cargill defeated Taya Valkyrie to become 60-0. We had a spot where she hit Road to Valhalla, Taya Valkyrie, and for a brief second, a quarter of a second, not a half second, not a full second, definitely not. But for a quarter of a second, you said, I think is Ty Valkyrie going to win this match? I think Ty Valkyrie's going to win this match. Oh my God, Ty Valkyrie's going to win this match. And that wasn't the case. Jade Cargill then hits Jaded. 1, 2, 3. 60-0. Smart Mark Sterling says 60-0. Everyone congratulate her. As we've said, she'll face anyone, anytime for this TBS championship. This then leads to Chris Statlander coming out. Chris Statlander comes out to the ring. A match is on. And Chris Statlander gets the victory, which is a curious decision. I had thoughts and heard and seen people speculate that they thought Chris Statlander was going to win the TBS championship or be the one to break Jade Cargill's undefeated streak, which is fine. I do question the time invested into this undefeated streak. Jade Cargill had her first match in March 2021. We're talking over 2 years, significantly over 2 years. And the way to blow it off is by a unannounced open challenge that you don't promote, you don't advertise, you don't make money with. You can play the story off, she didn't know it was coming, this, that, and the other, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not about protecting Jade in defeat at this point. It's about, no, you've put time into this. You've put time. I'm not saying it's the same as Roman Reigns, because it's not. It's by nowhere near the same. But the point is that imagine Roman Reigns' title reign was ended by, like, for instance, a Money in the Bank cash-in. People would say, why would you do that? They'd say, make money out of it. Like, you know, make money out of this. Sell tickets. Pop a rating. You know, put it on the main event of a TV show. You know, the ratings aren't doing amazing on Dynamite anyway. See if, you know, give a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Jade Cargill's probably going to lose this one. And then they tune in. That just, to me, seems like a colossal waste of time. And if you can argue that, but she was protected. She was protected. She didn't know it was coming. It doesn't matter. It's happened. It's happened. That's like, again, Jade Cargill wasn't Goldberg. But, you know, when Goldberg lost, at least it was the main event of Starrcade, even though it wasn't, again, the right move. Certainly not the right move. But it was main event of a pay-per-view. They sold tickets based on the fact that he could lose. They didn't do that here. They just ended it randomly. And they had 2 matches follow it. So to me, that doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, Statlander winning and beating Cargill, that's fine. But the manner in which this happened, to me, just seems bizarre and silly. And again, I think a waste of time for the time that was put into building her up. Now, Fightful has reported that Jade Cargill is taking time off. She's going to come back with a different attitude, what that means, or a different personality. So I don't know if this is AEW going, what we were trying to do with her wasn't working. Obviously, eventually she's got to lose, but I thought this was strange decision making, which can be said about a few things this evening. This then led to the first of the double main event, which of course was for the AEW World Championship, and this was spectacular. MJF retains the AEW World Championship, defeating Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy Jack Perry, and I could go through every single spot in this match. I'd be probably talking about an hour and a half, and I don't have a photographic memory like that. I've got to give them absolutely credit. I think, again, this pay-per-view is probably saved by these 2 matches coming up next. This was fantastic. This was, I think, to be fair, this is what everyone probably expected this match to be in terms of an in-ring product and more. The issue I always had with this match is the build to it and maybe the star power. But I really do believe this was, you know, I hate the phrase star-making night, but I think all 4 men really stood up this evening. Not so much about MJF. We know he's a superstar, and he did shine above. MJF still, you watch the match, MJF's the star out of these 4 pillars or anything like that. And I had massive reservations about having Jack Perry in this match, just because I just don't think he's anywhere near these guys' level. I think his ceiling is mid-card, upper mid-card at best. I don't think he's a particularly good babyface at the moment, honestly. Sammy Guevara, I think his ceiling is probably upper top mid-card, if that makes sense. Darby Allin, I do think can be a world champion in the future. I think obviously he's got look, he's got personality, he's unique as well. Going into this one, Jungle Boy Jack Perry makes his entrance. Sammy Guevara then makes his entrance. He comes up with Tay Mello. They've got the cue cards, reminiscent of how he used to do it picture in picture, and announces that they're pregnant. Tay Mello is having a baby, so congratulations to Sammy Guevara and Tay Mello. It's going to be difficult for him to work as a heel, I guess, going forward after that, but I think considering MJF, there were 3 baby faces and 1 heel, really. Darby Allin then had his entrance fit with this bizarre video package where he murdered a bride that was then buried by Elvis. Legitimately, that's what happened, so go watch it. And then MJF had a tremendous entrance as well, the devil with his devil worshippers, and as I mentioned, it was fantastic. There were subtle hints, callbacks, there was nods to all of their mentors, whether it be Sting for Darby, or Chris Jericho for Sammy, or Christian for Jack Perry, or Cody Rhodes for MJF. That was tremendous. And they even had Jungle Boy have the opportunity to be a bad guy and hit Darby Allin with the AEW World Championship. He refused because he's a dumb babyface, and that's what dumb baby faces do. And what I really like with this is that coming out of this, the MJF Darby Allin story isn't over. It's not going to be revisited anytime soon, but it will be revisited in the future, because you've had that match a while ago. I forget which pay-per-view was at. Which one was it at? Was it at Full Gear? I think it might be at Full Gear 2021, where MJF hits Darby Allin with a Dynamite Diamond Ring and beats him with a wrestling move, a side headlock takeover. And several times in the match, MJF tried to beat him with the side headlock takeover. Darby Allin tried to do the same, the side headlock takeover, and he nearly did it as well. People forget that. He did the skateboard to the back, side headlock takeover, and who was it? It was Jack Perry. He was the one that stopped him from winning the championship. Well, later on, it looks like Jungle Boy is about to be defeated because Darby Allin goes to the top rope. He's going to hit the coffin drop. MJF manages to scurry in, puts the championship across Jungle Boy. You have Darby Allin drop down, coffin drop, but he gets knocked out because he lands on the championship. And what does MJF do again? A side headlock takeover. And to me, that is storytelling for the future. That is eventually, one of these days, Darby Allin is going to defeat MJF, possibly for the World Championship. Maybe we're looking at the next AEW World Champion in Darby Allin. And when he does it, he should do it with a side headlock takeover, because that's the story. And that's something that AEW gets criticized for, and I think rightly so sometimes, is they don't maybe tell good enough stories, or sometimes their stories may not sometimes make the best of sense or the most linear of sense on a week-to-week basis. But that's a story that they can tell there. And AEW has told good stories before. They can do it. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page is an example of that. And I think this would be a fantastic story to tell. Eventually, Darby does win the big one, side headlock takeover, and how many routes could you go down there? You could have MJF retire Sting in that story. Again, there's so much you could do there. So I thought this was an excellent match. Unfortunate not to main event, but that's because they main evented with Anarchy in the arena, and upon retrospect, it's because you can't really follow this match because of the chaos. They had Violent Idol sing Wild Thing in this one, legitimately for maybe 15 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe 10 minutes, something like that. And it only eventually stopped when the Young Bucks super kicked the lead singer. That's legitimately what happened. Again, this was what you would expect. I think credit to AEW is that it's called Anarchy in the arena, and if it's just a light brawl, that's not really Anarchy. Legitimately, this was Anarchy. And it felt like it as well. It delivered what you wanted it to. There was blood, there was violence, there was thumbtacks, there was barbed wire, there was brawling outside of the arena, there was pile drivers, there was everything you could expect and more. Don Callis, or Don Fallis, was on ringside commentary duty for this one. And when it looked like the Elite was going to win this one, he was incredulous. He got up from the commentary spot, he left, and at one point it looked like he had handed, I think it was Wheeler Yuta, or it might have been Bryan Danielson, I forget, the screwdriver to use. So clearly he was on board with the Blackpool Combat Club. Kenny Omega had Bryan Danielson up for One Winged Angel. Actually, I think hit the One Winged Angel on him, and Don Callis is in the ring. Kenny Omega senses him. He turns around. But eventually, Omega is attacked by none other than a masked assailant. You're thinking, who's this assailant? It's Konosuke Takeshita. Of course, Konosuke Takeshita, who Don Callis has been scouting for a long time, and at one point was in the Elite, Konosuke Takeshita, and he was helping them in their fights against all of their various foes. And as I mentioned earlier on, I think clearly what we're building towards is a Kenny Omega versus Konosuke Takeshita match in the future. I think that's where we're going with this one in the immediate future. When that would be, I don't know. What's next for the remaining people? I think first of all, it's pretty massive that who got the pinfall victory in this one. It was Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler Yuta got the pinfall victory. That's pretty massive for him, and I think again he deserves a lot of praise for that. So the story coming out of this again, I think, is going to spin off into Kenny with Don and Takeshita. The Young Bucks, I mean, is this the end of the Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club? I mean, you could go to Blood and Guts, I guess. Maybe that's where they're going to go. You can have Takeshita as part of the BCC. Then you could maybe have Kota Ibushi as part of the Elite. Then you go to Blood and Guts. I think that would probably where they're going to go. There's a lot of people. But again, that would make sense. I mean, before when they had, was it Jericho? It's normally 5-on-5, isn't it? So you could certainly do that. So I think that's probably what we're going towards, unless they add someone else to the Elite that isn't Kota Ibushi, but I think that's probably where they're going to go, and I think that's probably going towards to Blood and Guts, which again goes back to just a big summer. AEW's got a big summer coming up. Again, ticket sales, people are going to dispute them and all that kind of stuff. This was an event that certainly, again, I think going into it felt cold. Going into it had a crowd that wasn't, I don't think, a traditional AEW crowd in terms of what you would expect from them, expectations from them. But they've got a really big summer ahead. They've got the launch of AEW Collision. They've got CM Punk returning. They've got Forbidden Door. They've got All Out. They've got All In, obviously. They've got the Owen Hart Foundation tournament returning, which of course had the opening ceremonies during the buy-in. Dr. Martha Hart was there. Of course, they're going to be concluding in Calgary at the Calgary Stampede in July 15, which is a Saturday. So that means that AEW Collision is going to have the finals of the Owen Hart Foundation tournaments, which again is by design because they want to get ratings on that show. So it's a big summer for AEW, and I think they need to try and turn the tide, and I think they need to try and somehow put all of this drama behind them, but I don't know how they do that because, there's still lots of drama in AEW at the moment, particularly with CM Punk coming back. But I think this evening you do see why I think Tony Khan's like, we need to bring this guy back, is because the product is cold. It is. Factually, it's cold, and it's not just and people take that as a slight against like people in this match, the Blackpool Combat Club or the Elite. It's not saying they're bad. It's just saying the product needs more, and the product needs freshening up, and the product needs to feel like it's the thing to watch and it's the place to be, and it's must see. Because as someone has watched this pay-per-view tonight, if someone I knew hadn't watched it and they said, "Oh, do you really need to watch Double or Nothing? Should I order it?" I would have said, you watched the last two matches, they were good, absolutely. But was it really a must-see event? Probably not. Is Forbidden Door a must-see event this year? You would probably think so. Is All In a must-see event? Absolutely, at Wembley Stadium. That's what they've got to get back to, and they've got to get those things right. Is the first Collision show a must-see event? Well, if Punk's returning, of course it is. How they follow that up, again, I don't know. That's the key thing that AEW has to do this year, in my opinion. So there you go, guys. That's the AEW Double or Nothing review. Appreciate you joining me this evening into the early hours of this morning. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.